Mark Gilbert Ian Hofford is a 15-year-old boy who lives in Guelph, Ontario, Canada. He was born March 11th in Belleville, Ontario to parents Celeste Lavangie and Scott Hofford. He attends Bishop Macdonald Catholic High School and his favorite subject is phys ed. His other interests include playing hockey, playing golf, and hanging out with his friends. He is just like any other regular boy, except he has dyslexia. Dyslexia, or developmental reading disorder, is an inherited reading disability in which the brain does not properly recognize and process certain symbols. Dyslexia occurs when there is a problem in the area of the brain that helps to interpret language. It is not caused by vision problems and does not interfere with one's ability to think or to understand complex ideas. Most people with dyslexia have a normal intelligence and many have above average intelligence. It is the most common learning disability in children and persists throughout life. Dyslexia can affect different functions. Visual dyslexia is characterized by numbers and letter reversal and the inability to write symbols in the correct sequence. Auditory dyslexia involves difficulty with sounds of letters or groups of letters. The sounds are perceived as jumbled or not heard correctly. Dysgraphia refers to a child's difficulty holding and controlling a pencil so that the correct markings can be made on the paper.
Dyslexia is a form of a learning disability, and that's where the student would, when they're reading or writing, they're reversing a lot of letters, so D's or B's, 9s or 6s, that sort of stuff. Also, we see obviously people with dyslexia have difficulty with the reading, so it's very laborious, it's very slow. Students would get bored with reading, don't want to read, put off work. People may think that they're lazy and they don't want to do the work, or where really they just can't do the work. So anything to aid with the reading is a support. Also with the writing part, the use of computers, obviously. So the fact nowadays that we have so many computers and we have all this technology really helps people with dyslexia.
My favorite feature about myself is my athletic abilities and my funniness. One thing I could change about myself is my dyslexia, because it slows me down in school and it's frustrating.
In terms of reading disorders or dyslexia, we have approximately about 50 kids at the school who have a learning disability. In terms of kids who have a learning disability with reading, I would say quite a bit. I would say about 90% of those students have reading disabilities.
Well, Mark progressed well. He hit all the physical milestones. He crawled when he was supposed to, walked when he was supposed to, but his speech was slow. And I was a little bit worried about that. When he was 2.5, he still wasn't talking. Madeline was the only one that could understand him, and we had to get her to interpret what he was saying all the time. So I knew that was going to be an issue, so we had him in speech when he was about 2.5, which is very young. The lady, the speech therapist, said that's her youngest client ever. So I knew there was going to be a problem, and I have a little bit of knowledge about learning disabilities, being a teacher, and so I knew that the speech and learning disabilities sort of go hand in hand. So I was aware of that, and we tried to get help for his speech right away.
Well, Mark came to see me when he was, I think, about 8 years old, and that was a long time ago. And at the time, as I recall, he was reading at a very beginning level, so didn't have a lot of sight word vocabulary and really relied on letter sounds to be able to decode new words that he came across. But that didn't seem to be working for him, so what we did together was we sort of came up with a new approach for him using the Davis methods to be able to see the words as a whole word as opposed to going through and sounding out a word. So we're using his strengths of his visual memory to be able to remember what words look like. And that eventually helped him create a bigger bank of sight word vocabulary, and reading just became easier for him.
When I was at the Davis program, all I can really remember was making letters out of clay and writing the alphabet out of clay, and I knew that, and then I did it backwards, did the letters backwards, and I learned the backwards alphabet for a bit. I knew it for a bit.
I think one of the greatest challenges for people with dyslexia is to function in a system that doesn't really cater to their thinking style so much. If they don't understand the way that they think and they learn, then it's going to be challenging for them. It's kind of like fitting a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't work really well. It's not that effective.
Reading is a skill that you need for all subjects. So if your writing is weak but your reading is good, it tends to be a little bit easier. But if you can't read, just think about not being able to do any of your subjects. So the big thing is to support the reading, to practice the reading, use the supports that are in place.
You can advocate for yourself and know what you need in every learning situation.
Having a learning disability is hard on your self-esteem. It makes it hard when you're not really good at school to be at school all day long. So that has repercussions at home.
When I was first learning to read, it was really stressful for me, knowing that everybody else could do it but not me, and Mom and Dad were always like getting mad at me because I couldn't read, and they didn't really understand until I went to Helen, and then they started to understand more and not get so mad at me. Now I feel a bit more confident. I still don't like reading in front of the class. I get nervous then in case I make a mistake and everybody laughs at me, but I can read in my head well. It's okay. I just get off track really easily. Well,
when we were little, we always had bedtime stories. I read every night to my kids, or they would read to me. We try to get them interested. But Mark, of course, would not be sitting quietly listening to the story. He'd be playing on the floor, rolling around, and I'd ask him a question, and I wouldn't think he'd get it. But of course, even while he was rolling on the floor, he would still be able to answer the question. So it was slightly annoying, because I didn't want to give him heck and say, "Come sit beside me and listen." But he was still listening while he was playing and doing other things on the floor. So he never could sit still.
I spend on homework about 2 hours a night, a lot more than other kids. Pretty much eats up my weekends a lot of times. Usually what will take like somebody 10 minutes or taking like half an hour. Taking a long time to like work through a question and find something to write down if it's like English.
And then in high school, we just kind of help him stay organized, stay focused on his schoolwork, and then, try to make sure that, every night he gets kind of one-on-one help, tutoring in each of the subjects like science and math, so that he's able to, what he doesn't kind of pick up at school, we can kind of stay on top of at home.
Well, my parents help me a lot with my homework. I'm just kind of there, out of focus, not really listening.
Biggest parenting challenge? Well, it's basically a second job. When you come home, you have to stay on top of the schoolwork, and he's not able to work independently that well. So, although he's getting better all the time, that's tiring. And then also with hockey, I always try to stay involved so I can stay close to the situation and help him with some of the issues that he's had.
I think that people that have dyslexia can be at a wonderful advantage because there's some wonderful gifts and talents that come along with being dyslexic. The idea of that visual spatial learning style allows for some wonderful things to grow. Creatively, artistically, thinking in a strategic way, thinking out of the box. But also, if they've had some struggles along the way, they've probably developed a sense of resilience that many people just don't have. They're hardworking, determined, so there's some wonderful qualities there that can allow a person to just grow and move forward in their life.
There's people out there that have learning disabilities that you wouldn't know. Tom Cruise, there's a lot of very successful people who have learning disabilities, but they still are successful. They've just learned to cope with that that hindrance. It's much like people needing eyeglasses, or people who have hearing impairments, or people that are blind. They're still quite capable of being successful in society, in their job, or whatever they do.
He's sports crazy. When he was little, he was 2 or 3. We have a dress-up box, and you'd think we'd have party dresses in it and stuff. We did, but for Mark, we had to have his baseball outfit. Then we had to have a little bit of hockey something. So what Mark would do when he started to play, he only had so much focus. So he would play baseball for 10 minutes, but dress up. He'd have to wear his baseball uniform for 10, and then he'd change to hockey, put on his lederhosen and play hockey. Then he would play soccer. He'd get on his soccer outfit to play soccer. And then of course, if he was going to be a cook in the kitchen, he'd have to have his chef outfit and things like that. So he was always very aware of what to wear for the sports.
I got him involved in hockey because I loved hockey playing as a kid, and I got a lot of enjoyment and benefits out of playing hockey, so I wanted to have him hopefully enjoy the same benefits that I had.
We got Mark involved in sports right away because, well, first my husband's a sports nut, hockey nut, and so we wanted them to have some bond to get between them, so we made sure that Mark was involved in sports. But I mean, if you're lacking in sort of at school and that you can't do well and your self-esteem is affected by that, you need to be able to counterbalance that with something you're good at. And so we knew Mark, being physical as a young boy, always active, would excel at sports. So we had to make sure that he was totally involved in something that he loved and that he could do well to sort of counterbalance being yucky at something else.
I mean, I think it was always a challenge for him in hockey. It was harder for him to kind of cope with a lot of the things, and you know, because of his condition, you know, we had a lot of coping strategies that we worked together on. Made sure that he always had good nutrition, that he was always well rested. We used to do stuff before the game to help him stay focused, where other kids' parents just kind of dropped them off at the rink and you know, didn't really worry about it. I always kind of understood Mark's situation, so I'd always try to do things that would kind of help him cope with it. He always had a lot of desire, and he always had a lot of fun playing hockey, but he used to have a hard time kind of staying focused in practices and in games. But as he got older, he kind of outgrew that.
When I'm playing hockey, I get to be myself and not deal with like learning disability or school. I just get to be like every other kid, and I can focus on something that I really like to do. I get to be with like teammates and people that like me for who I am, and not like, even though I have like a learning disability, they still like me. They like me for my talent and teamwork. When I grow up, I really want to be able to play professional hockey somewhere in the world. Doesn't matter where.